Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about something serious, the crystal meth crisis in Europe. Now, you've probably heard a lot about this problem in the US, but what's happening across the Atlantic is a whole different story, with its own complex history and, frankly, a devastating human cost.
Think about that for a second. I was awake for a whole week. That's a quote from someone who's been through it, a former user, and it just perfectly captures the insane, relentless power of the drug we're going to be talking about.
So yeah, meth's devastation isn't just an American thing. It's a huge, growing crisis right here in Europe. For a long time, it was kind of a smaller problem here compared to the US, but now, all the signs, we're talking wastewater data, police reports, and just gut-wrenching personal stories, they all point to the same troubling conclusion. More people are using it, and more of it is being made right here on the continent.
So, to really get a handle on this crisis, we've got to go beyond the stats. We need to understand what addiction actually feels like. And to do that, we're going to follow the story of a young guy named Dominic. His journey, well, it really shows you just how insidious this drug's grip can be.
Dominic's story starts when he was just 14. He came from a good, stable family. But one New Year's Eve, he and his friends were just trying to buy some weed, but the deal fell through. So the dealer offers them something else, crystal meth. And just like that, one spontaneous, what seemed like a harmless decision sent him down this unbelievably dangerous path.
And once it started, the addiction was just relentless. I mean, Dominic started out by snorting it, but pretty soon his body built up a tolerance, and that high just wasn't the same. So he had to chase it. He had to find more extreme ways to get that feeling back. That meant moving on to smoking, and then this method called parachuting, where you actually swallow the drug wrapped in paper. And from there, it was on to the final, most direct route, injection.
So, what makes it so addictive? Well, this number right here is a huge part of the answer. Methamphetamine just floods your brain with dopamine. That's the chemical that controls pleasure, motivation, our whole reward system. And meth cranks up its release by an insane 1,200%.
And to put that 1,200% into perspective, check this out. In orgasm, that gives you about an 80% boost in dopamine. One hit of meth, it can be 17 times more powerful than that. The high is so immediate, so incredibly intense, that it can literally hook you from the very first time you use it.
So how did a drug this powerful end up on the street? You might be surprised. Its history is, well, it's not what you'd expect. It actually started out as a totally legal, over-the-counter medicine.
Yeah, meth has really deep roots in Europe, especially in Germany. Back in 1938, it was launched as a little pill called Pervitin, a wake-up pill. It was so popular, they even put it in chocolates marketed to housewives. But its dark side became pretty clear pretty fast. The Nazis started handing out millions of these pills to their soldiers to keep them awake and aggressive during the Blitzkrieg. But even with all the growing concerns, it wasn't actually banned in Germany until 1988. And that, of course, created the perfect vacuum for an illegal black market to just take over.
So, once it was illegal, did production stop? Of course not. Instead, a really sophisticated and frankly dangerous international trade network popped up. A brand new meth highway for distribution all across Europe.
And the center of this new highway? That would be Czechia, or the Czech Republic. It's become the undisputed hub for meth production in Europe. And it's really a perfect storm. The main ingredient, ephedrine, you can get it pretty easily by buying cold medicine in bulk right next door in Poland. And on top of that, Czechia has a strong pharmaceutical history, which means all the chemical know-how is right there, ready to be used.
And what drives the whole thing? It's simple economics. Look at this price difference. You can buy a gram in Czechia for maybe 10 or 20 euros, but you can sell it for a lot more just across the border in Germany. For Dominic, it was 25 euros. That profit margin is what turns users, like Dominic, who was just 16 at the time, into smugglers. They could just go to Czechia, buy it cheap, and bring it back to sell and fund their own addiction.
And from Czechia, the drug just spreads out like a web. Eastern Germany is a huge market, obviously, but the network is getting bigger. We're seeing labs pop up in the Netherlands and Belgium now, sometimes with help from Mexican cartels, believe it or not. And we're seeing more and more people using it in places as far away as Norway and Sweden.
Okay, so this all sounds pretty bleak, but here's the thing. Even when someone is in the absolute deepest grip of addiction, there is a path out. So now let's talk about that grueling but ultimately hopeful journey to get clean.
And the very first step is just surviving withdrawal. And it is a brutal physical and mental crash. As the drug leaves your system, you're hit with extreme fatigue, sweats, heart problems, and this overwhelming, all-consuming psychological urge to just use again. To give you an idea of how bad it is, one former user said they literally just slept for an entire week to get through it.
Now, for those who are able to get professional help, therapy is a really structured journey. It's broken down into these phases. First, you've got the orientation phase, which is all about figuring out why you started using. Then you move into the intensive phase, where you learn how to deal with triggers. And finally, there's the reintegration phase, which is all about getting ready for a totally new life after rehab.
But you know, the motivation to quit doesn't always come from a clinic. For another person we learned about, a woman named Ashley, the real turning point was something deeply personal. She'd ended up in a psychiatric hospital after a really bad high, and that's when she got some news that changed everything.
She found out she was pregnant, and that discovery, in her own words, gave her so much strength that she actually managed to quit all on her own without any formal therapy. Her story is just this incredible reminder that the reason to change can come from the most unexpected places, and it can lead you to a whole new drug-free life.
And what about Dominic, the young man we started with? Well, he found his way back too. It took serving time in prison and finally committing to therapy, but he did it. He reclaimed his life. He talks about how his world used to be just gray, but now he says his world is full of color again. He can actually enjoy life again.
So stories like Dominic's and Ashley's, they give you so much hope, right? They prove that recovery is absolutely possible. But there's another side to this. Dominic also talked about how drugs were being smuggled into prison, by guards, even by priests. It suggests this drug has seeped into every single layer of society. And that leaves us with a really tough question. When a drug is this destructive and this widespread, is the battle against it ever truly winnable?